There it is. And I go, well, yeah, I'm no rocket surgeon, but I think that if you'll take that plant out of that closet and take it outside and keep it in the sunshine, that it'll go ahead and blossom. What Jude is telling us is that we must keep ourselves in the love of God. That doesn't mean that you must keep performing so that God will love you. He's saying, keep in this reality. Keep yourself in the reality that God loves you as much as He says He does. And that will cause you to be strong and to grow. Now I have to say something here. And I've said this several times this morning. Folks, you'd have to have half a brain and I don't know what else. Very foolish not to believe that every church in America has 3 different types of people in it. Christians who are truly saved. On the membership roll, Christians who are truly saved. Sinners who know they're sinners and know they're going to hell. And then a great majority of people who believe they're saved, but they bear no fruit whatsoever. Now, folks, it's just a well-known fact. Theologians, Southern Baptist theologians, talk about it all the time. It's just a well-known fact because we've so lowered the gospel. So when I tell you about the love of God, there are going to be different reactions. The lost church member, that's the guy who considers himself Christian, but he's really lost, bears no fruit. He's going to hear that, and it's going to be like a comfort for him in his sin. He's going to go, well, man, it's a good deal. I mean, go to heaven, God loves me no matter what I do. And it makes him very nonchalant about sin. He doesn't really care. Whether he commits sin, living in sin, it's no big deal to him at all. That's because he's lost. That's like a man who would say, I've married a good woman. She's going to be faithful no matter what I do, so I'm going to treat her like a dog. I'm going to do whatever I want, live the most wicked ways, violate everything in our marriage oath because she's a good woman and she's going to continue loving me. That man no more loves that woman than a man on the moon. In the same way, the person who hears, the church member who hears about the unconditional, enduring love of God, and then is nonchalant about it and says, well, great, man, let's party. They don't know God. And more importantly, God doesn't know them. But the true Christian, now I'm not talking about the perfect person. The Christian is not perfect. One of the evidences of the true Christian faith is that you realize you struggle with sin and you hate it. But the true Christian, when they hear about the unconditional, unmerited favor of God, that it is forever, 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 that it does not change, it cannot diminish because it would be less than perfect, it cannot increase because it's already perfect. When they hear that, they go, if this is the way true Christianity is, then I want to be more holy. I want to be more conformed to the image of Christ. I want to serve Him. There's an old story, and I'm sure it's an urban legend, about Abraham Lincoln going by a slave trader block. There was a young black woman up on the block being sold, and he purchases her. And after he buys her, he takes her out of town, writes her certificate of freedom, and takes the manacles and everything off of her wrists and the bindings off of her neck and looses her from her chains and says to her, "You're free." And she says, "You mean I can do anything I want to do?" He said, "Yes." "You mean I can go anywhere I want to go?" "Yes." And she says, "Then I choose to go with you. Because I've never met a man so kind." It's the same way. There is a sense that as a Christian I could go and do these things, worldly things, terrible things. There's another sense in which I cannot, because the love of Christ constrains me. There's a sense in which we're free. There's another sense in which we are so enslaved. We are enslaved to the love of God. I suppose it would be much easier to cheat on a wicked man than it would on a righteous man. In the same way, God is so good, He is so kind, that His kindness and the awakening He's done in the heart of His children make it very difficult for us to trespass against Him and to run away from Him. It's His love. It's His love. One of the things that so helped my life happened years and years ago. I was raised sort of in a way where if you scored 95 on a test, why didn't you score 100 and then get the extra 5 bonus points? If you scored 20 points in a ball game, well, there were 8 shots you could have taken. Just performance. And the idea of always struggling to be in the inner circle, to be appreciated, to be loved. Now, a big part of that is just selfishness and self-centeredness. But when I became a Christian, I was determined not to be outside of God's inner circle. I was going to work harder than anybody else has ever worked. I was going to try to suffer more. If they were martyring people out on the streets, I was going to run out in the streets and get martyred. I mean, I wanted to be in God's inner circle until finally, after years of about 18 hours a day on the 3rd floor of an old building in Peru, I literally broke and fell down on the stairwell, weeping and crying out, totally exhausted. And this is actually what I said to God. I mean, this has really happened. I said, God, I don't want to go to hell because I'm afraid to go to hell. But I don't want to go to heaven because I'm ashamed. My performance is so bad. I'm not Spurgeon. I'm not Jonathan Edwards. I'm not all these great men of God. I'm just me, and all I seem to do is fail. And so I don't want to go to hell because I'm afraid to go to hell, but I don't want to go to heaven because I'm just ashamed of everything I have done and have not done. It was at that moment that God really began to work. It's almost like God said, okay, He's at the end of His rope, bring in the construction crew. And God began to show me something that it just stays with me. It's just something that doesn't leave. I am loved. Don't have to move a 1/4 of an inch to the left or a 1/4 of an inch to the right. I am loved. I'm loved on my good day. I'm loved on my bad day. I'm loved when I perform and don't perform. And when you keep yourself in that, wow. When it's no longer your performance, but His performance on the cross, everything changes. Everything. And when you realize it has been God from the very beginning, and it will be God to the very end. How many of you have ever seen that prayer, footprint, or that little story, Footprints in the Sand? The guy's walking along, and as he's walking, he sees these visions, and during the good times of his life, there were two sets of footprints in the sand. Him and Jesus walking side by side, and during the bad times in his life, there was one set of footprints in the sand, and he was like, God, why did you leave me at those terrible times in my life and everything? And God says, well, it was in those bad times you saw one set of footprints, not because I left you, but because I was carrying you. And we all go, ooh, that's so beautiful. That is absolutely ridiculous. And I'll tell you why. He's always been carrying you. He's carrying you through the bad times. He's carrying you through the good times. And if He wasn't carrying you, you wouldn't be going anywhere. It's all of grace. It's all Him. Now look back at it. I know I'm taking a little bit of your time, but look, you just go home, watch something you shouldn't watch on television. So just listen to me for a moment. Just think for a moment. How in the world did you get here? Some of you, I don't know, but in a church like this and being in Alabama, I'm sure there's some serious rascals in here. I've seen some guys who've really done some things. And maybe you were about the worst of the pack that you ran with. How on earth or in heaven did you get here? I mean, you've got friends who weren't as wild as you, and they still don't care anything about God. And you're sitting here going,